Hey, what up, everybody? This is Stephen Breach coming to you with my views on the upcoming 2016 Royal Rumble and who I think is going to be winning it. Honestly, in my mind, I have 6 competitors written down on a piece of paper that I think are going to be able to win this year's Royal Rumble. Honestly, I believe that one of them is my lock to win it, that if I had to put a money down bet that I would place to win this deal, I think it's going to be him. I think that, with watching WWE television, it would make a lot of sense if another guy won the thing, and then, with 4 of these other guys, honestly, I'm just pulling at straws. Obviously, the more and more I watch wrestling, I remember when I was a kid and I loved wrestling and I would, go to Blockbuster and I would rent the 1990 Royal Rumble, that I honestly believed anybody in that match could win that fucking match. I remember thinking like, oh shit, Dino Bravo's coming out. Dino Bravo is the Canadian strongman. He can throw anybody over the top rope. I honestly believe that, when I watched the Berserker back in the day, who had a gimmick of, going on WWE Superstars and winning all of his matches by throwing people over the top rope and getting a count out, he was another guy that had a great shot of winning the Royal Rumble. He won all of his matches by throwing guys over the top. I don't even know if he ever eliminated anybody in a Royal Rumble. But his gimmick didn't last that long. I liked it, but I was a kid also at the time. But, we'll look at this list of guys. We'll talk about, who has a shot to win this year's Royal Rumble and how much fun this is going to be. I don't know how to really do this other than just talking about, the guys who I think is the real lock to win this year's Rumble, and then going down from there. I know I don't really build any suspense, but it is what it is. You like the video or you don't. We'll see how it goes. But my pick to win this Rumble isn't even really a surprise if you watched my last video about the Royal Rumble tickets going on sale. I think the guy who's going to win this year's Royal Rumble is going to be capitalizing on, how big this guy is and what he means to WWE and how it's going to guarantee him a slot in the main event. I know that this guy's mainly been used as a heel, but, he's been gone off of television so long that when he finally returns to WWE, he really honestly could go any way. He could be a guy who's a babyface. He could be a guy who's a heel. Even though they use this guy as the heel, he's loved so much by the fans, with people buying his t-shirts and supporting him, that he honestly could be a babyface, and even with the manager Paul Heyman that's by his side, of course, we're talking about none other than Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar is a guy that is probably going to make or break WrestleMania. He is a guy that's, has already been used a lot more than we've seen him in the past, with him coming in and having matches against Undertaker, and having the match at SummerSlam, having the match at Hell in a Cell. He is the guy who won the feud against Taker, but, definitely when he comes back and it's Royal Rumble season, we're going to pick up with the same problem that we've had with Brock Lesnar that I think I've seen ever since he's came back to WWE, and he has this sort of, schedule of basically, we'll use you a little bit here, a little bit there, and we're not going to use you in times when business is down, because even though he is one of the easiest guys to make business pick up, they want to use him. It's not his fault. I didn't sign him to the contract. He only signed a contract that they offered. If they're going to offer you to work less dates, you're going to work less dates. Think of you go into work tomorrow and the boss says, hey, we're going to pay you the same amount of money, but we only want you to show up 3 days out of the week. You're going to take those extra 2 days off because they're paying you the same amount of money. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. Who doesn't want to spend more time at home in their life? And Brock is a guy that likes to go to work and he likes to be by himself, and that's basically how he's going to do it. So, you can't say that, screw that Brock Lesnar guy because he's not on the show all the time. Vince and Triple H and whoever else, it's their deal for bringing them in. But easily, business picks up when Brock is around. If he wins this Royal Rumble, going into the main event, he could fight anybody. He could fight Roman Reigns. He could fight Sheamus. He could fight whoever the champion is at the time, and it's going to make sense. Obviously, there's not many guys on the roster that Brock could have a match against, and easily if Roman Reigns wins his match at TLC and becomes the champion, they could set up a storyline of Triple H going into the well and getting Brock Lesnar to fight against Roman Reigns, trying to get the title off of him. They've done it in the past with John Cena, setting up Cena versus Brock, and I always thought they were going to build more on that storyline of basically Triple H having to shake the hand of the devil, being Paul Heyman, and by biting off more than they can chew, and maybe bring in Triple H to fight Brock Lesnar, and try to be the guy to take the title off of him. Building up suspense of he'll do anything to sort of get this championship back. And that's not what they ended up doing. They just had him come back and act like, it was no big deal. We hadn't seen him since Night of Champions. But I think Brock Lesnar is the guy that's probably going to win this year's Rumble. From there, we go to the guy who I think, if you watch WWE television, makes the most sense if he wins it. I'm going to group these two guys together, even though I don't give Dean Ambrose a lot of hope to win this year's Rumble. But it would be a kick in the pants to his career if he was to do it. And it would be a real big sort of surprise that might give wrestling a little bit of like, oh, wow, they're finally giving some love to these mid-carders. I think that Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose would be a great pick to win this year's Rumble. The one thing about Roman is that if he doesn't win the TLC match, he's going to need to find himself in the main event of WrestleMania somehow. Definitely, you always have Cena, you always have Brock, you definitely have Taker, but you need somebody to go after the championship, and they've been really trying to push Roman for so long. It would make sense if he doesn't win the TLC match to have Roman Reigns be the guy to go after this. And, for him to win 2 Rumbles in a row, it's not going to be much of a surprise, so Dean Ambrose would be. And if you did have Ambrose or you had Roman, and especially if you have it come down to them in the end, you're going to be able to play off Roman Reigns beating Dean Ambrose at Survivor Series in the finals. And, they did have their moment where they did push each other in the face and sort of say, I'm fed up with you, because they were both trying to beat each other. And, it wasn't about brotherhood, it was about the championship at that time. Maybe you do have, this mega powers explode, and you move on, and then you could set up a match at Fastlane, much like Roman Reigns versus Daniel Bryan. Maybe put the Royal Rumble spot on the line, and then all of a sudden your February pay-per-view, which even though you're in between Rumble and WrestleMania, and people think that's the time that WWE cares the most about it, I've never been a big fan of that February pay-per-view. I believe that honestly, you get rid of that, you had a whole bunch of suspense, you just make Monday Night Raw and especially SmackDown, because it's moving to USA and they need to make it must-watch television for at least that time period. You just make all of those matches matter. It is what it is, but you got a business. You got to try and sell the network, and you got to make February and March matter to get you to April. So I understand why they do it, but definitely if Roman and Ambrose win it, you could have the other guy be the second to last guy eliminated, setting up Roman versus Ambrose or Ambrose versus Roman at Fastlane, and then you have that February pay-per-view really means something. I heard Undertaker talked a lot about on the way home from work today on Wrestling Observer Live. Undertaker is a surprise guy that you could bring in from like 26 to 30, and once he comes down to the ring, he just eliminates the guys, and all of a sudden he's your number 1 contender to go after the championship. More than likely, WrestleMania 32 will be built around Undertaker's last match. You could even put this set out in stone that even if it's not win, lose, or draw, this is Undertaker's last match. He's just done it all, and there's nothing left to do, so you put him in the main event spot, going after the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. We've already seen this guy's streak in, so we can't really put the streak on the line. You need to have a match matter. You definitely saw that just having Undertaker wrestle in a match at WrestleMania last year against Bray Wyatt doesn't really mean anything, and it was a match that was used in that sort of spot that's normally left for the Divas Championship match, for people to make sure they run to the bathroom, get that last little bit out of them before the big one, because you don't want to miss that. And Taker going after my problem is that if Taker wins the Rumble, I don't really know who to put him up against. You got to think that more than likely the odds-on favorites for who Undertaker would be facing would be either Sheamus or Roman Reigns. Being how you can only really have championship changes if it happens at the Rumble or Fastlane, and I would guess that more than likely the TLC match is going to be a rematch, win, lose, or draw, between Sheamus and Roman. So I don't really know who you would put Undertaker up against. But I mean, if this match really means something to you, Brock could win the Rumble, just a sporadic Monday Night Raw, or he could win it at Fastlane. You could really do anything if you wanted to have Brock versus Taker, and especially make it for the championship at WrestleMania to have it be a must-see thing. Triple H is the guy that might be fed up enough with Roman Reigns being champion that maybe Triple H enters into the Rumble, and he's a surprise. Definitely with so many guys being injured and off the main roster right now, whether if it's Cesaro, whether if it's Seth Rollins or Randy Orton, even Sting, who's not going to be competing at WrestleMania this year, it looks like. You need somebody like Triple H to step up. You need his match to mean something. We saw Triple H insert himself into WrestleMania 30, where if he beat Daniel Bryan, he would go on to the main events to win the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, because he could not put up with the bickering of his Evolution friends. He sort of brought back Batista to have a moment in the sun. He brought back Randy Orton, his champion. He didn't really bring him back. He was already been there. But he tried to make these guys, have a match that was really going to mean something. And instead, because of what was going on with Daniel Bryan, they started, basically, fighting within each other, and he couldn't make them do it. So, he wanted them to quit acting like babies. And he basically the only way he thought he could do it was to go in there and beat it for himself. And then, of course, number 6 on this list would be Chris Jericho. Is a guy that is wrestling sporadic house shows for WWE as of right now. I think that he's spending a lot of his time on his rock band Fozzy. He's the guy who has not wanted to be on television. Because he just, I think that honestly, when it comes down to it, I think he's just sort of fed up with the writing team and the ideas that they have for a lot of people. He came back, he did the Night of Champions, secret guy of joining in the tag team with Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose. He said on his podcast that when he was asked to do it, he wanted to know where the storyline was going, and a lot of people weren't able to put together where it's going. So maybe that walkout on Ambrose and Rollins is going to lead to something in the foreseeable future, building up to WrestleMania. If there was ever a time that they really need Jericho back on television, it would be a time like now. If you can go back and you can remember to the injury, which brought back Jericho back from his long hiatus away from the ring. It was, I think, John Cena getting hurt, and they had to make a phone call, and they brought Jericho back. I always thought that he was one of the smartest guys involved in wrestling. Jericho got to a point where they were going to really lowball his offer, because it wasn't that they didn't want Chris Jericho, they just didn't have a great need for Jericho. So instead, they had to up his offer to bring him back, because it was basically emergency time of needing big names on television, and Jericho was the first name that they thought of to call. Jericho going up would be able to have a great technical match if they wanted to have a real wrestling match in the main event of WrestleMania. The only problem is that is Sheamus, a mid-card guy, going to be a long-term goal for the Authority to keep the championship, or is the championship going to be on the move? Maybe Roman Reigns actually steps up and becomes the championship guy for WWE. If so, I don't see Jericho being a guy going up against Roman Reigns, but we'll see. The Royal Rumble's coming up. It's only a month and some change away, and it's going to shape up what WrestleMania 32 is. As of right now, we don't have a lot of answers to the question of what is WrestleMania 32. Is it going to be one of the biggest WrestleManias of all time? I haven't heard a number of how many tickets they sold, but I'm guessing they probably sold in the number of about 50,000 tickets, seeing how it's hard to pull up tickets on WrestleMania, on Ticketmaster.com. So there's probably about 50,000, 60,000 people out there with WrestleMania tickets knowing, what the hell is going to happen to WrestleMania 32? What did we really buy tickets to?